Welcome to Let's Rewatch It Again. I'm Jourdan, and Dad's on a hunting trip, and he hasn't been home in a few days. Today, we are rewatching Supernatural, a 15-season series that follows two brothers, Sam and Dean Winchester, as they hunt supernatural beings. The brothers are played by Jared Padalecki, yeah, Dean from Gilmore Girls, and Jensen Ackles, who is named Dean in this show. If you think that's cute, wait for it. Their father, who is missing in action, is played by the actor Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Dean's all around. Anyway, if you've never seen Supernatural before, don't be afraid. Actually, you probably should be a little scared. This show was pitched as a monster of the week with an overarching story of two brothers searching for their father who is hunting a demon that killed their mother. Sam and Dean grew up with a single father who gave them guns and rock salt rather than cookies and milk. The boys were raised in their father's 67 Impala and seedy motel rooms, while their father carried on the family business of saving people, hunting things, and wearing layered, unzipped jackets. Seriously, so many layers of unzipped jackets. The creator, Eric Kripke, wanted the show to feel deeply American. The boys are like cowboys riding into town to defeat the bad guys and rumble off down the road in their muscle car. The score of the show plays a huge role in the overall tone. The series features two composers, Christopher Lennertz and Jay Gruska. Each composer scores every other episode. They write themes for their own episodes and characters and work with one another if there is an overlap between episodes. They try to base the music on the visuals, such as in the episode Dead in the Water, in which off-angle shots are accompanied by repetitive and discordant notes, and spoken words such as water and die are followed by a lower pitch to create a gurgly sound. I get chills just thinking about it. Whoa. While there are similarities in the scores for situations such as the brothers and their father, about a third of each episode's score is newly written for the series. What? This is a CW show, and they write scores every single week? Are you kidding me? This is incredible. I definitely think that the score and the way that the show is brought together as a whole is the reason why it's been on for 15 seasons. Our creator, Eric Kripke, also fought hard to have classic rock music weaved into each episode, and several episode titles refer to classic rock songs. On the last episode of every season, except for the first, the song Carry On My Wayward Son by Kansas is played at the beginning. This song has become, in a way, a theme song for the show, even though the music does not play over our title sequence. All right, I could keep talking about this forever, but we need to dive right into our pilot episode. That's right, Season 1, Episode 1. Our synopsis is after not seeing him in 2 years, Sam Winchester is suddenly visited by his big brother Dean, who insists that Sam help him look for their father John, who disappeared on his latest hunt for a poltergeist. Sam accepts only after his brother promises him that he'll be back in time for a crucial interview. They trace their father's tracks for the woman in white, a spirit of a wife who killed her own children after finding out her husband committed adultery and now haunts and kills unfaithful men. Our pilot episode begins at night looking at a dark, inky sky with spindly, wintry looking trees and the words Lawrence, Kansas, 22 years ago. So we are starting way, way, way back when the boys are wee little lambs. I will say this is one of those shows that you probably need to watch with minimal lighting because a lot of the scenes are very dark in actual coloring, and sometimes it can be hard to see all the details that we want to. We pan over a house at night, and we have Mary, our mother of the boys, carrying little boy Dean into the room and saying goodnight to her infant, Sammy. And then, oh my gosh, Dad's home. John Winchester, their father, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, appears at the door, apparently home either from work or somewhere. It's unknown. And Dean runs up to his dad, excited to see him. John picks him up, holds him, and Mary walks past asking if he's got him. And John holds Dean close to his chest, rubbing his back, and says, "Good night, Sam," to Sam way over in the crib. Sam is a small baby, but he is clearly not a newborn. He's able to kind of like move around a little bit, looks a little bit with it. And then we turn out the bedroom light, and things begin to get a little creepy. A little crescent moon nightlight flickers. Our baby mobile above Sammy stops spinning. Oh, it's so creepy. And then we look at the clock and we see that it stops time. What? What are we doing? What is happening? We cut to the baby monitor with little like red flashing lights that the sound is getting more and less, because Sammy is now making lots of sounds, a little bit of crying. Mary turns on the light and asks for John. He's not in bed with her. She crawls out of bed and we gently swoop onto a picture of Mary and John looking very sweet and happy together in front of the house. Mary goes down a dark hallway, sees the silhouette of her husband standing over the crib, and asks him, is he hungry? The silhouette barely turns his head and just says, shh. So she's like, all right. Down the hallway, there is a single flickering light. Mary goes up to it and gently taps the light fixture until it stops flickering and stays steady. What's weird about this is underneath the fixture is like an old-timey wedding photo of two people, unnamed. We don't know who they are. I don't know that we ever do, but I feel like it's one of those little like set design things that just makes us feel a little bit more unsettled by everything that we are seeing. All of the coloring, the quivering light fixtures, the very eerie score that we have in this that's going on here. It's just everything is leading us to know that something is not right. Mary goes to the top of the stairs because she can hear something downstairs, and about halfway down the staircase, she sees that the TV is on and John is on the couch asleep in front of it. Oh my God. She runs back up the stairs, calling out for Sammy, the baby. As soon as she runs into the room, we zoom into her face and then cut away as she screams. John runs up the stairs and we get this really cool shaky camera as if we are John running up the stairs into the room. He flings the door open and everything is calm and quiet. Sammy is just gently cooing little baby coos in his crib. And John breathes a sigh of relief. He stands over the crib and he's like, oh, Sammy, okay, we're all right. And Sammy's smiling. He looks very happy, just real sweet. He's looking up at his dad like, oh, hi. And then John reaches out to touch his son and little drops of blood are now on his hand from the ceiling. John looks up, sees Mary pinned to the ceiling, looking ghostly pale, and fire blazes from underneath her mid-back. And then there's just fire blazing all over the ceiling. John falls to the floor in panic and then jumps up, grabs Sammy into the hallway. He hands him to little boy Dean, who is barely 5 years old at most. And he says, Dean, take your brother outside. Now, go. Don't look back. That little bit of quote right there for Dean resonates through his mind for the rest of his life. Like, you talk about moments from your childhood that just do not leave you. That little moment with his father, Sammy in his arms, never leaves Dean for the rest of his life. His job is to take care of his brother. Oh my God. Okay. I have chills just talking about it. Woo. We follow Dean down the stairs, and then we cut back to John, who's running back into the nursery, but everything is completely engulfed in flames. Mary is gone. Flames explode throughout the room. I don't even know how John gets out of this room alive. I mean, it is wild. We get to the front yard where Dean is standing with Sammy, looking up at the window, just completely orange and gold with flames. John runs out the front door, scoops Dean and Sammy up both together, and runs from the house as the window explodes. Wow. Firefighters have shown up. I mean, it's a whole scene. There are neighbors outside, like peeping at everything, which, I mean, who knows what happened? A nursery caught fire? Like, what is that? Like faulty wiring? Did someone leave the stove on? Like, what happened here? John is sitting on the hood of his Impala, Dean right up beside him, tight against his hip, and John is holding Sammy in his arms. All three of them look wrecked, as they should be. We zoom in to John's face and just see the devastation there. And our title sequence of Supernatural flickers across the scene, completely silent. Rock music leads us into Stanford University, a dorm room where there's a picture of John and Mary sitting on top of a dresser. A girl in a sexy nurse costume is calling out for Sam. Jared Padalecki pops his head out, and we see just like the most adorable college guy. Now, personally, Jared Padalecki is not my type. I can see that he is a beautiful specimen, but just for me personally, he's not my cup of tea. My best friend, yes, she is completely obsessed with Jared Padalecki. It's so great, but which is good because we don't have to fight over him. Dean is for me, Sam is for her. It's great. It's great. Not that either of these people belong to either of us. I mean, come on. But it's just fun to get excited about fictional characters. Jessica asks where Sam's costume is, and he says, "You know how I feel about Halloween." Now, I just want to say that Sam is wearing a white t shirt, a plaid shirt, and a jean jacket. And of course, his jean jacket is not buttoned up. The Winchesters do not button or zip any of their jackets. All right. Outerwear is always open. I don't know how that keeps you warm, but you know what? That's what we do. We then go to a college Halloween party where everyone is decked out, costumes everywhere, lots of creepy decorations. Sam is the only one not dressed up for the occasion. And they're talking about how he's so smart, he's getting into law school, blah, 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 and that he got a 174 on the LSATs. Now, I just want to say, Elle Woods in Legally Blonde got a 179. So who's smarter? No offense, Sam. No offense. We know that you're the smart kid here. I'm just saying, I do know that tidbit. Sam reveals that he has not told his family about this amazing accomplishment or the fact that he has an interview with Stanford Law coming up. And if it goes well, he gets a full ride next year. That's huge. I mean, I don't care what kind of money your family makes. Getting a full ride is a really big deal. And he doesn't want to tell his family because they're not exactly the Bradys. And his African American friend goes, "And we're not exactly the Hustables, but I would still tell them." And I love that it's just like, no, nobody's family is perfect, but celebrate big accomplishments. It's a good thing. It's good. Come on, Sam, get excited. Like, I feel like he's not allowing himself to be excited about this. And of course, his girlfriend, who we later learn is named Jessica, is very supportive and really sweet. And they just seem to be really like pleasantly content and happy together. And it's just nice. When we learn how Sam grew up, it's just really nice to see that he has like a friend group. He has a solid girlfriend who is sweet and kind and supportive and just there for him. These are all really great things. Later that night, Sam and Jessica are fast asleep in their bed with no blanket, I might add. I always think that's so weird when people on TV and movies don't have a blanket covering them, at least most of the way. What? Sam awakes as he hears a crash somewhere in his apartment. He gets out of bed. Everything is super dark, and the front door of their apartment is open, and he looks across the way and sees his bead curtain. Oh my God, a bead curtain. Are you kidding me? And a figure crosses in front of that same doorway. He attacks the silhouette, who has spiky hair, I might add, and the two of them tussle in the dark. And the only thing we're really able to see is like arms and legs and dark bodies like hitting each other, throwing each other around. And then Sam is tackled to the floor. And finally, we get some light and see that Dean, his older brother, is here. Sam is like, "You scared the crap out of me." And Dean says, "Well, that's because you're out of practice." And then Sam tumbles over and knocks Dean to the ground. And he's like, "Oh, okay, maybe not." They stand up, and then Jessica turns on the light. And she is wearing tiny little like boxer shorts, like made for girls, and a crop top Smurf t-shirt with like a V-neck situation. I'm sorry, but just this looks so uncomfortable to sleep in. Like, it's the tiniest amount of clothing while still being sort of clothing. I don't know. And she didn't have a blanket on. I don't know how this girl isn't frozen. I don't understand. I mean, obviously, it's fall. It's October. You just went to a Halloween party. I don't know. Anyways, when she turns on the light, Dean looks at Jessica and is like, "Oh my God, hello." Sam introduces the two of them to each other, and she's like, "Oh my God, really? Your brother?" Dean says, "I love the Smurfs." And he gets closer, walks up to Jessica, fully looking her in the eyes the entire time, and says, "You're really out of my brother's league." And she's like, "I can put some clothes on." And he's like, "No, I wouldn't dream of it. Seriously." But I just want to add that he is not looking down. He is looking directly into her eyes while he's saying all of this. So even while hitting on her, he's still being pretty respectful. And I don't just say that because I'm in love with Dean. Dean tries to tell Jessica that, hey, my brother and I need to have a private conversation. And Sam insists that whatever Dean has to say, he can say in front of Jessica. And he stands right next to Jessica, pulls her into his embrace, and the two stand side by side as Dean says, Dad hasn't been home in a few days. And Sam is like, okay, so he's pulling a Miller time shift. Big deal. He'll be back home later. Dean nods once, looks into his brother's eyes, and holds it with this steady, hard glare and says, Dad's on a hunting trip, and he hasn't been home in a few days. The lack of tone here really says so much. We zoom in to Sam's face, and he says, Jess, could you leave us alone for a minute? Whoa, what does this mean? The brothers are walking down a set of stairs as they discuss that Sam believes that their dad is always missing and that he's always fine. And Dean insists that no, he's missing and I need your help to find him. Dean asks him, are you coming with me or not? And Sam says, no, I'm not. I swore I was done with hunting for good. And Dean is like, come on, it wasn't easy, but it wasn't that bad. And Sam was like, oh, really? When I told Dad that there was a monster in my closet, he gave me a 45. And Dean's like, so what? What was he supposed to say? And Sam says, I was 9. He's supposed to say, don't be afraid of the dark. And Dean is like, of course you should be afraid of the dark. You know what's out there. Such a different perspective on childhood. And Sam is just expressing how upset he is about the way that they grew up. He's like, are you kidding me? Dad's obsession to find that thing that killed her, and we still haven't found it. Like, come on, our whole childhood is this. And Dean is insisting, we saved a lot of people too. Sam insists that he doesn't think their mom wanted this for them. And he's like, the weapon training and melting the silver into bullets. Dean, we were raised like soldiers. And I think that's a really interesting thing because as we see in this first and second season, Dean really is the good little soldier for their father. And in a way, Sam is the rebellious son, even though if you looked at their character archetypes, it would seem that it's the opposite because Dean is like the devil may care kind of guy with the cool car that, sleeps around. Like you would think that he's like the black sheep in like a, white collar picket fence type family. Instead, it's completely the opposite. Sam is the one that wants to go to school. He wants to have a normal job. He wants to like mow the lawn on Saturdays, like he wants to have that normal life. And that in this family is the exact wrong mentality. So interesting. Dean insists that Sam's life is not normal. And Sam is like, no, my life is safe. It was Dad who said, if I go, I should stay gone. And Dean's like, listen, Dad is in real trouble. I can feel it. I can't do this alone. And Sam is like, yes, you can. And I think it's really brave that Dean actually says, well, I don't want to. And that's really huge for someone to admit that they want help and they need it. Those are really big things. Sam finally relents and says, what was he hunting? Then we open our trunk and we have a huge arsenal of weapons. Oh my God, so many knives and guns and different things. So Sam asked Dean why he wasn't with Dad when he went missing, and Dean says that he was doing his own gig, a voodoo thing down in New Orleans. And then Sam goes, Dad let you go on a hunting trip by yourself? And we zoom into Dean's face and he looks dead at him and goes, I'm 26. And I just love that so much. Like, come on, I'm an adult. So Dean pulls out some files and says that their dad was just outside Jericho, California about a month ago. They found this guy that was completely disappeared out of his car. Another one in December of different years. 10 of them over the past 20 years. All men, all same 5-mile stretch of road. Just disappeared out of their cars. Started happening more and more, so Dad went to dig around. That was about 3 weeks ago. Haven't heard from him since, which is bad enough. And then I get this voicemail yesterday and he pulled out a flip phone again. And then we hear a distorted voice saying, Dean, something is starting to happen. I think it's serious. I need to try to figure out what's going on. And then we hear some kind of voice in the background. And his dad says, be careful, Dean. We're all in danger. And then Sam says, there's some EVP on that. And Dean goes, kind of like riding a bike, isn't it? Once a hunter, always a hunter. And so then Dean says that he slowed the message down, took out the hiss, and this is what I got. And it's a female whispering, I can never go home. Ugh, chilling. I can't. Ugh, never go home. Very interesting. Dean shuts the trunk and says that he hasn't bothered Sam in 2 years and he's not asking for much. Just this one trip. Sam says that he'll go with him, but he has to be back first thing Monday because he has an interview. And Dean's like, a job interview? Skip it. No, it's a law school interview. It's my whole future on a plate. And Dean is like, law school, really? And Sam ignores that and just says, do we have a deal? Yeah. Jessica is very confused that he's just taking off right now. And Sam's like, I'm sorry, it's a little family drama. Um, and Jessica's confused, like, what? But it was like a hunting trip? He's like, oh, yeah, it's not a big deal. We're just going to go to get him and bring him back. And Jessica is very worried about the interview because it's in a couple of days and she doesn't want him to miss it. And she stops him at the door and asks him if he's okay. And he's like, yes, I promise. I'll be right back. And she says, at least tell me where you're going. But we don't hear him say anything. Rock music transitions us to Jericho, California at night in a car. We're not with the Winchesters right now. It's some guy driving a something car. I'm not good at cars, guys. Sorry. He's on the phone driving, which is something people used to do way back when. And he looks up and sees a woman in a long white dress, kind of like swinging her dress around, standing in the middle of nowhere. It's night. It's like misty outside. He pulls up to her with the window down and says, car trouble or something? And she just turns to look at him, and her dress is all tattered, long black hair. And she just kind of looks at him and slowly says, take me home. Ugh, no, this is a bad plan. He opens the door and she slowly gets into the car with her long white dress. She leans back into the seat and lifts her chin, and she's got some serious cleavage going on. So he asks her, you coming from a Halloween party or something? And then we see him look down at her chest. And he says, you know, a girl like you really shouldn't be out here alone. Ew, that is so gross. She slowly turns to look at him. My God, her eyes are so empty. She pulls her dress off of her knees to like show the bareness of her skin. And she says, I'm with you. Oh, I can't. How is this a good thing, mister? How? She grabs his chin and turns him to look at her, and he like swallows hard, keeps looking at her chest. And she asks him, will you go home with me? And he's like, yeah. So he turns on the car and squeals away, taking a sharp turn as they go. We end up in an abandoned farmhouse that looks very, very alone. She looks up at the house and says, I can never go home. He looks up at it and says, what are you talking about? Nobody lives here. This can't be where you live. And then he looks at the passenger seat and she's gone. Okay. He gets out of the car, starts to walk around. He's like, what? That was weird. Joke's over. Okay. This isn't funny. You know, typical scary movie stuff. And he's like, you want me to leave? And he's looking around. Everything is dark. There are no lights anywhere except for his headlights. He's starting to get a little nervous. The camera shakes a little bit. He's looking around, trying to figure out, where did she even go? It's so weird. The windows are broken. We are inside the house looking out through a broken glass door at him. And we pan over a old picture of like some little kids and a mother. And then a bird shoots out of the open door at his face. And he jumps and runs, gets back in the car and tries to swoop away, tires squealing and everything. He's breathing heavy as he drives away. And then all of a sudden we slowly pan to the left and she's sitting in the middle of the back seat. He looks up into the rearview mirror and sees her back there, screams, and accidentally hits into a barrier over a bridge. And then we are outside the car looking at the steamed over windows as he yells and screams and blood splatters all over the window glass. The next morning, Sam and Dean are at a very, very tired looking gas station. Sam is looking through all of these cassette tapes that Dean has in a giant box. We learn that how Dean pays for everything is faulty credit cards. The company sends them cards and they use them and then just cut them up, throw them away, never pay for anything. And they also use fake names. Sam insists that Dean needs to update his cassette collection because number one, it's cassette, and number two, Metallica, Motorhead, Black Sabbath. It's like the greatest hits of mullet rock. And Dean insists that house rules. Driver picks the music, passenger shuts his cake hole. And then he turns on the music and Sam keeps talking. And Dean says, "Sorry, can't hear you. Music's too loud." One of the best things about this show is that the car scenes are kind of fantastic. We get lots of like rumbling down the road, always seeing street signs of how far we are from the next town. And we get lots of shots inside the car, the boys just kind of interacting with each other, almost like it's their living room or kitchen table. It's just a really cool little thing that this car is more like their home than anywhere else. We pull up to the site of this really broken down looking bridge with two cop cars and lots of cops wearing like hats. And Dean opens a box and pulls out some ID of what we think might be FBI. We see a couple different fake IDs in there. Oh my goodness. Down below the bridge, there are two cops who are looking in the water. They're trying to figure out what happened because this car has no sign of struggle, no fingerprints, everything is spotless. And yet, where's the person? Apparently, this kid named Troy went missing, and his girlfriend is putting posters up downtown claiming that he's missing. Dean comes over and says, "You had another one like this last month, didn't you?" The cop asks who he is, and he quickly flashes his ID and says, "Federal Marshals." The deputy insists that aren't they a little young for marshals? Dean's like, "Oh, thanks, awfully kind of you." And he's like, "So you had another one like this?" And he's like, "Yeah, right up the road." So Sam asked this victim, "You knew who he was?" And he's like, "Town like this, everybody knows everybody." So they ask him what his theory is, and no one seems to know. Serial murder, kidnapper ring, which, oh, it's crazy. And Sam and Dean insist that they're not shocked by this theory and just kind of walk off like, "Oh, we don't need this." And then the boys argue over how they talk to the police. And then all of a sudden they see that real federal marshals, FBI guys, have showed up. And Dean just goes, "Scully, Mulder," as in the X-Files, and they walk away because they're not supposed to be there. They don't have real IDs. In town, they actually find the girlfriend of Troy putting up posters of his missing face all over the town. And while she's talking to them, another girl walks up and asks her if she's okay, which is very sweet because she's talking to two strange men. And as the deputy said, in a town like this, everybody knows everybody. So for two strange guys to all of a sudden be talking to a young girl, yes, good. Love that everyone is protecting one another. Sam and Dean join the girls at a diner, and Troy's girlfriend starts telling the story of how she was on the phone with Troy when he hung up, saying he would call her back, but he never did. So Dean tells them, "The way Troy disappeared, something's not right. So if you've heard anything, we need to know about it." And both girls kind of look at each other. And what I think is interesting here is they're both a little more like gothic in styling, dark eyeliner, dark lipstick, dark hair. It doesn't look like their natural hair coloring either. And they're both wearing lots of black and jewelry. It's very interesting. Because the girl that was on the side of the road didn't quite look like that. She looked ghostly with dark hair, but not gothic. So it's like Troy chose someone that didn't look like his girlfriend. I don't know. That's just me speculating. Friend of Troy's girlfriend explains that, well, with all these guys going missing, people talk. And there's kind of a local legend. This one girl, she got murdered out on Centennial like decades ago, and supposedly she's still out there. They say she hitchhikes and whoever picks her up disappears forever. Oh my God. Both brothers look at each other like, "Oh, really? Just right up our alley." We then go to Dean researching in the newspaper of the Jericho Herald, and he looks up different things. I mean, this is, man, this is so around the time that Google was just still having trouble. It was so new. And both brothers are fighting over what seems to be the single computer in this little library. Sam says that angry spirits are born out of a violent death, but he's guessing that maybe it's not murder, and that's why they can't find results. So he changes murder to suicide in the search engine, and we finally get a result of suicide on the Centennial 21 years ago. A woman named Constance Welch. She jumps off the Sylvania Bridge and drowns in the river. And they're trying to figure out why she does it. And an hour before they found her, she calls 911. Her two little kids were in the bathroom. She leaves them alone for a minute, and when she comes back, they aren't breathing. Both of them die. There's a quote in the newspaper by Joseph Welch, her husband, who says, "Both our kids died, and Constance just couldn't bear it." The bridge is the same exact bridge where they found the car of missing Troy. So, of course, we got to go back there tonight. The boys look down at the dark water. Oh my gosh, just like all the dark colors in this show are so great. Our night tones are usually like these muted blues and silver, gray, black, of course. And it's just so well done. Dean insists that this could take a while because they have to keep digging until they find Troy. And Sam is like, I have to get back by Monday. Dean just really doesn't get it. He's like, you're serious about this? You're just going to become some lawyer, marry your girl? And Sam's like, yeah, why not? And then Dean asks the big question, does Jessica know about you? And Sam says, no, and she's never going to know. And Dean's like, oh, yeah, that's pretty healthy. Yeah, you're really going to have to face up to who you are one day, though. And Sam says, no, I'm not like you. This is not going to be my life. And Sam insists that nothing is going to change the fact that mom's gone. Even if they do find the thing that killed her, it's not going to bring her back. And Dean is so angry when he says this that he grabs Sam and shoves him against the side of the bridge and says, don't talk about her like that. And it's just really hard because Dean was 4 years old when his mother died. He knows what she looks like. He has memories of being with her. And Sam, unfortunately, was barely 6 months old. He had nothing, and he has nothing to go off on. The closest he has is pictures of his mother. And I mean, if you've ever lost a parent or a friend, pictures just really don't do it justice. It's a moment in time. And if you don't have a memory of that moment, it's almost like that person isn't real. We then look up and there's a woman in a white dress with long dark hair. Oh, yeah, that's her from before. She's standing on the wall of the bridge, looking down at the water. She turns to look at them, part of her hair covering her face, and then she just leans out and falls down into the water. Both boys run to the wall of the bridge and look over, and they're like, where'd she go? And then the headlights of their car turn on, and they both look over, and Sam's like, who's driving your car? And Dean just slowly pulls the keys out of his pocket, like, no one. And then the car starts driving straight toward them, gaining speed. So the boys start running, and they're on a very narrow bridge. There is nowhere for them to run. And then they grab the edge of the bridge and jump over the side, and the car parks right next to where they jumped off. We fade to black and then go right back into a wide shot of the bridge over the dark, rushing river. Like, this water is fast moving here. Sam is hanging from the side of the bridge, calling out to Dean, who is all the way down on the ground in the water, and Dean is completely covered in mud. He's like, oh my God. I don't know how he survived that jump. It was far. I mean, hopefully he landed in water that wasn't too shallow. Dean is so pissed. He comes back up, and I mean, he's completely drenched in water. He's coated in thick mud, and he's like, that Constance chick, what a bee. I'm sorry, I can't say the real word. I don't curse. He's like, man, she really does not want us digging around, huh? And Sam is like, well, where does the trail go from here, genius? And then he tells Dean that he smells like a toilet. Our next scene is Dean throwing down a credit card under the name Hector Aferman onto a open book register for a seedy motel. And he's like, one room, please. And he's still coated in dried, slick mud. It does not look cute. I'm sure he doesn't smell a whole lot better. The hotel owner asks him if they're having a reunion or something. And then they're like, what do you mean? He said, oh, well, there was another guy underneath that name. He came in, bought a room for a whole month. Interesting. So Dad was already here. We get a cool shot of inside a hotel room looking at a doorknob, and Sammy is on the other side picking the lock. Love it. Such a great shot. He swings open the door and slowly peers in. Such a fun little shot here. They slowly stand up, and they are standing in room number 10. Clearly not their room. It's Dad's, because, oh my God, someone has definitely been existing in this room in squalor. There's trash everywhere. There's a circle of salt around the bed, pictures and magazines and newspaper clippings all over the walls. Sam picks up a little bit of the salt and rubs it between his fingers and says he was worried, trying to keep something from coming in, clearly. Now, what you don't know, and what we are learning in this moment, is that apparently a ring of salt and standing inside of it will keep supernatural beings on the other side. Now, not all of them, but usually, like, spirits of some kind, the undead. It's interesting. We only know about ghosts right now. That is what we're learning in this episode. But with each episode, you learn about a new supernatural being, and today we're learning about poltergeists. The boys look at the wall and see that their dad has created a timeline of all the Centennial Highway victims, and every victim is very different heights, different ethnicities, and they can't figure out what all the guys have in common. Another wall has all of these different beings that could have done this to these men, and then we come upon the Suicide on Centennial article. Above it, their dad has labeled it Woman in White. I do kind of wish, even though the pilot is just called Pilot, that instead we had called it Woman in White. I think it would have been more creative, more interesting, but episode title is Pilot is fine. Sam turns on a lamp right below the article, illuminating the idea that, hey, maybe it's this chick. Maybe she did it. And so Dean's like, well, then obviously Dad would have figured it out, found the corpse, and burned it. Sam says, well, if I were Dad, I'd go ask her husband if he's still alive. Dean says, well, why don't you find an address? I'm going to go get cleaned up. And Sam says, Dean, what I said earlier about Mom and Dad, I'm sorry. And Dean holds up his hand and goes, no chick flick moments. I love it so much because Dean is like, we don't apologize to each other. It's fine. We're brothers. We're always fine at the end. Love that. I mean, he doesn't say it, but that's basically what he's saying. Sam finds a picture of him as a little guy with Dean and his father sitting on the hood of the Impala. And that picture is just sitting on the mirror. And I just love that like no matter what, their father always had them close by. Dean says that he's going to get some food at the diner, and Sam says he doesn't want anything. And again, we get the joke that the credit card they're using is not their name because Dean says that Aframian is paying. We step outside with Dean, and the deputies are talking to the hotel owner who points at Dean like he did something. Oh, God. Dean calls Sam and is like, hey, 5-0 kind of spotted me. Go find Dad. And then he hangs up the phone. He's like, oh, hey, problem officers? And the officers ask him, so where's your partner? He goes, partner? What are you talking about? I don't have a partner. The deputy points to his partner and tells him to go get Sam. So he's like, so fake US Marshal, fake credit cards. You got anything that's real? And then Dean just nods and goes, my boobs. They throw him on the hood of the cop car, of course, and give him his rights. So you want to tell us your name? And he's like, Nugent, Ted Nugent. I think this is the sheriff because he's got the star on his chest. Says, I'm not sure you realize just how much trouble you're in here. And Dean's like, we talking like misdemeanor in trouble or squeal like a pig trouble? And the sheriff says, you got the faces of 10 missing persons taped to your wall, along with a whole lot of satanic mumbo jumbo. You are officially a suspect. And Dean goes, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Because when the first one went missing in 82, I was 3. The sheriff says, I know you have partners. One of them's an older guy. Maybe he started the whole thing. Now, here's the thing. These cops wouldn't be wrong if that was the case. They have a really good case to build against these boys here. They could be working with their father on this whole thing starting way back when. I mean, they're wrong in this instance, but in real life, that would be pretty suspect. Let's be honest. So the sheriff says, so tell me, Dean, and then throws a leather-bound journal on the table, and it lands so heavily. And he says, I thought that might be your name. And he opens it, and there's like pictures and articles and notes and drawings. And he goes, it's 9 kinds of crazy, but I found this too. And he opens it, and we see the name Dean circled with some numbers. And he says, you're staying right here until you tell me exactly what the crap this means. The numbers are 35 to 111. We don't know what they mean either, but Dean seems to know. Our next scene is Sam going to Joseph Welch's house, the husband of the woman who jumped off the bridge. He shows Joseph Welch a picture of his father, and Joseph says, yep, that was him. And Sam tells him, well, we were working on a story together. And he's like, yeah, he was asking me a lot of questions. He asked me where she was buried. Sam says, and where was that again? And Joseph's like, do I really have to go through this twice? And Sam claims that he's only fact checking, if you don't mind. Apparently, Constance is buried in a plot behind the Breckenridge house, which I believe is most likely that abandoned farmhouse that we saw at the beginning of the episode. And then Joseph says that he doesn't want to live in the house where his children died. I honestly don't blame him. Sam asks Welch if he ever married again, and Welch claims that she was the prettiest woman alive, and he never married anyone else, and that Constance was the love of his life. And Sam says, well, that should do it. Thanks for your time. And then he walks off. And Welch just looks a little funny. I can't explain it, but I don't know if he was telling the truth. So then Sam asks, Mr. Welch, have you ever heard of the woman in white? And Welch is like, what? A woman in white? It's a ghost story. Well, it's more of a phenomenon, really. They're spirits. They've been sighted for hundreds of years, dozens of places in Hawaii, Mexico, lately in Arizona, Indiana, all these different women, you understand, but all share the same story. And he said, I don't care about this nonsense. Bro, seriously, leave me alone. And Sam says, you see, when they were alive, their husbands were unfaithful to them. And these women, basically suffering from temporary insanity, murdered their children. Then, once they realized what they had done, they took their own lives. So now their spirits are cursed, walking back roads, waterways, and if they find an unfaithful man, they kill him. And that man is never seen again. Oh, I gotta say, that's pretty boss. And Joseph is visibly shaking. And he's like, you think that has something to do with Constance, you jerk? And Sam is like, you tell me. Again, Joseph is trembling. And he says, I mean, maybe I made some mistakes. But no matter what I did, Constance never would have killed her own children. Now you get the heck out of here. I mean, he uses much stronger language than I am. And he tells Sam to never come back. He looks like he's about to cry, and I think he might. We cut back to the police station, and Dean is claiming that the numbers are a locker combination. Behind him, another cop comes in and says they got another 911 call, and he asks Dean if he has to go to the bathroom, and he says no. And then he gets handcuffed to the desk. Cool, thanks. He leaves him in the room by himself with the journal that has a little paper clip. Awesome. And we already know that the boys know how to pick locks, so we don't even have to see Dean picking the lock to know that he's about to be free. He waits until the deputies are leaving, and we see him standing behind a door, ready to escape. It's nighttime again, and Sam is driving the Impala, and he answers the phone to find that Dean has escaped. And Sam tells him everything, that they are dealing with a woman in white, and she's buried behind the old house. And Dean says that he figured out that Dad has left Jericho because he's got his journal. And Sam's like, he doesn't go anywhere without that. And Dean's like, well, he did this time. He wants to let us know where he's going. He left coordinates. And Dean's like, I'm not sure where the coordinates are yet, but you know. And then Sam hits the brakes because the woman in white was standing in front of his car in the highway. Oh my God. He immediately pulls to a stop, and she's in the back seat saying, take me home. And Sam is like, oh, great. This is so not what I need right now. We cut to what would be a commercial on TV, and then we fade back to black. And again, the woman is saying, take me home. And Sam is like, no. And then she locks all of the doors and starts the car. And so now Sam is trapped in the driver's seat as the car begins to drive off down this dangerous highway, and he can't get out. Now, remember, the woman in white only kills men who are unfaithful. And so far, we have not seen Sam exhibit any kind of unfaithful behavior to his girlfriend, Jessica. But we don't know how Constance follows rules. We don't know what her plans could or will be. She stops the car in front of her house, and Sam says, don't do this. And Constance begins to cry and says, I can never go home. Sam tries to look back at her, but of course she's gone. And then she's in the front seat, crawling on top of him, throwing him back. And she says, hold me, I'm so cold. And Sam says, you can't kill me. I'm not unfaithful. I've never been. And it almost looks like she's trying to reach into his chest to crush his heart. And then she gets close to his face and says, you will be. And she tries to kiss him, but he will not kiss her back, which is, yeah, Sam, stay alive. But he's trying to reach behind her and grab the keys, but if he could just... And then she pulls back. Her face kind of changes a little bit into something sinister, and then she disappears. And now we can't see her, but Sam can feel her hand reaching into his chest, and we see little burn marks in his t-shirt as her hand flickers in and out of vision, trying to break into his heart. And now we've got Dean outside the car shooting her with rock salt, and she keeps flickering in and out of vision. And Sam sits up in the seat and then says, I'm taking you home. He hits the accelerator and rams the car all the way through the house. Genius. I love it. She keeps claiming she can never go home, and now she's there. Dean runs into the house and says, are you okay? And he's like, can you move? Yeah, help me. I mean, oh my God, I can't believe the car is still in one piece. And then we see Constance, our ghost, pick up a picture of herself with her 2 little children. Oh my gosh, heartbreaking. I can't imagine. She looks up at the boys and okay, we're in big trouble now. She uses a dresser to pin them against their own car, and electricity crackles all around them as the lights flicker. And she almost doesn't seem to understand that what's happening here. It's like, is she doing it? Or, oh no, she's not doing it. Water is pouring down the staircase, and at the top of the stairs are her children. Oh God, so much water is pouring down the stairs because remember, they passed away in the bath. Oh dear God. The kids say in unison, "You've come home to us, Mommy." Oh God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Constance screams as both children hug her, and then all 3 of them are engulfed in flames. The screams continue, the lights flicker, and then all 3 spirits melt into the floor in a cloud of black, a puddle left behind. Both brothers breathe a sigh of relief and throw the dresser off of themselves and go to inspect the puddle. And Dean says, "So this is where she drowned her kids." And Sam agrees, "That's why she could never go home. She was too scared to face them." And Dean says, "You found her weak spot. Nice work, Sammy." And then he slaps Sammy's chest. Oh, God. And then Sam says, "What were you thinking shooting Casper in the face?" And Dean's like, "Hey, I saved your butt. I'll tell you another thing. You screwed up my car. I will kill you." We get a really cool wide shot of the car driving down the highway with one headlight on because they need some repairs. The next destination is, of course, our coordinates, which are in Colorado, about 600 miles away. And Dean's like, "Hey, we can make that by morning if we just haul butt." And Sam is like, "Absolutely not, Dean. I have to make my interview. It's in 10 hours. I have to be there." And Dean is like, "Dang it, fine, whatever." And then we get this really funny line of Dean saying, "I'll take you home," which is just such a great reference to everything we've been dealing with the woman in white. Dean pulls up to the apartments or dorms. It's hard to say. It seemed like a really big, roomy dorm, more like an apartment. And Sam says, "You'll call me if you find him. Maybe I can meet up with you later." And Dean's like, "Sure." And then he leans out and says, "Sam, we made a really good team back there." And Sam's like, "Yeah." And then Dean drives off. And I love that. It's just a subtle way of saying, like, "Hey, that was nice. I miss us hanging out." The camera waits on Sam as he watches his brother drive away and he sighs. And we just see that, like, these brothers love each other so much, but they're just not living the same lives. Sam comes into the dark apartment and calls out for Jess, but she's nowhere to be found. He sits on their bed and he can hear the shower running. And so he's like, "Okay, all is good." He lays back, eyes closed, and then a few drops of blood onto his forehead. He opens his eyes, and Jess is pinned to the ceiling exactly the way that Mary was at the beginning of the episode. Fire engulfs around her body as she screams. He calls out for her, and Dean has come back. He runs into the apartment, grabs Sam, and pulls him off the bed as Sam is yelling for Jess, trying to go back inside. The entire apartment is engulfed in flames, just like the nursery. Dean shoves Sam all the way outside. And again, we have fire trucks and firemen trying to put it all out. Man, I mean, Dean is standing, watching all of this transpire. All these college kids are walking around, like trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Dean walks up to his car where the trunk is open and Sam is looking through all of the guns. He just looks at Dean and sighs. He throws the gun into the trunk and says, "We have work to do." And then he slams the trunk shut. And that's our episode. Whoa. Ah, chills every time. This pilot episode is stellar. I love that our opening and closing scenes mirror each other and it prompts into action. I love it. We see at the beginning of the episode that John Winchester is prompted into action to find the killer of his wife. And then at the end of the episode, Sam, who never wanted this life for himself, is now prompted to find that same killer for a whole new reason. The layers of revenge are real. I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed this episode. I'm going to have to give this episode 10 out of 10 cassette tapes. I mean, I don't know where I'm going to put a cassette tape. I mean, I don't know that there is a cassette tape player anywhere in my vicinity, but 10 out of 10 for this episode. It's a really great pilot. We get a really good view of who each brother is, the lives that they have led, and where they are going. And even though we only get a tiny snapshot of who John is, we still feel compelled to find him because there are so many reasons to find him. We need to find the killer. We've got to find John because John has to be there too to kill this being that murdered their mother and Sam's girlfriend. It's amazing. Amazing. If you want to watch Supernatural, the entire series is available on Netflix, but I highly recommend seasons 1 through 3. They're absolutely incredible. It's very much, like I said, a monster of the week, and October is just the right time to start watching. I fully admit that I've only watched to about season 12 or 13, but my best friend and I are watching from the beginning of Supernatural, and we have reached season 8. And she's never seen the show before, and I've seen these episodes, but after about season 6, I don't rewatch those as much. I definitely have rewatched seasons 1 through 4 many, many times, and I keep going back to them. They're still always, always good. I sincerely hope you have enjoyed our episode today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or any requests of TV shows or movies you want me to rewatch, you can send all of those things to my email at letsrewatchitagain@gmail.com. You can also find me at Instagram at letsrewatchitagain. And hey, if you did enjoy this episode, go ahead and give me a review, a rating, anywhere that you're listening to podcasts. Why not? Follow me everywhere you can. We also now have a YouTube channel, Let's Rewatch It Again podcast, so that you can have a visual aspect as well as just listening wherever you want to. Let's get excited. Until next time, I'm Jourdan, and I'll catch you on the flippity flip.